In the deep silence of Caliban's haunted woods, something more than a child was born. Something ancient, something remembered. Beneath the gnarled canopy of Caliban, where even the stars feared to shine, the trees whispered in a tongue older than man. It was a world of twilight, perpetual dusk trapped beneath branches thick with moss and mourning. This was not a world of hope. It was a prison of myth and monster. And into this world, the lion fell. A comet, they would say. A burning god-child hurled from the blackness of the void. His gestation cradled in a capsule of ceramite and fate. It struck the earth like vengeance, splitting stone and soil, and the beasts of Caliban howled in the distance. But no cradle met him, no mother's arms, only the endless dark of the forest, where the trees breathed malice and the ground drank blood. He should have died there. Instead, he rose. The child was found not by noblemen or kings, but by the forest itself. It watched him, feared him, and yet, curiously, it did not consume him. He was different. Even before he spoke, before he understood, he commanded. The beast circled, yet dared not strike. The branches bent, but did not break upon him. He had no name, no words, no past, only silence. They would later call him the lion, and he would never sleep easily. Caliban was a cursed world, not by sorcery or warp taint. No, something older, a rot in the marrow of the planet, a paradise long buried beneath the arrogance of forgotten empires. It had become a realm of gothic horror, a night world overrun by monsters that defied logic, dragons with eyes of flame, wolves with iron hides, creatures that walked like men, but reeked of the void. Men had retreated into fortified keeps, crumbling citadels of lost honor. There, within moats and battlements, the order held fast. Not a kingdom, a brotherhood. Knights who kept the darkness at bay with ancient swords and ritual silence. And one among them, a man of great renown, was Luther. He was the one who found the child. Or perhaps it was a child who allowed himself to be found. Luther had come seeking monsters in the forest, and in truth, he found one, but one shaped like salvation. The child was naked, filthy, feral, but his eyes burned with a silent intellect that made the veteran knight flinch. No child should look like that. No boy should feel like that. They brought him back, clothed him, taught him, and still he did not speak. Not for a year. Not until the stars aligned and the beasts came again. It was during an assault on the keep, when the walls bled flame and the order's knights fell screaming beneath claws of steel and bone, that the child stepped forward, not with fear, but with rage. He picked up a sword. He moved with impossible grace. He killed, not like a boy, like something remembering. And when the beast lay dead and the fire choked the sky, the child turned to Luther. His lips parted. "I am ready." They named him Lionel Jonson, the Lion of the Forest. It was not a name born of affection. It was reverence and fear. He rose through the ranks of the order with terrifying speed, not just in skill, but in strategy and presence. He could outfight any knight by the time he was 17, and outthink their commanders by 19. He consumed books in hours, learned languages in days. He would walk the halls at night alone, and the guards would pretend not to see him pass, whispering prayers to themselves. Some said he never slept. Others said he dreamed with his eyes open, staring through time itself. Luther became his mentor, his friend, a brother in arms. But the lion, he was not a brother. Not truly. He was other. Luther taught him tactics, chivalry, the ideals of knighthood. And for a time, it seemed the lion believed in them. But even then, even as he smiled, the lion's eyes searched the stars for something lost or something coming. By the time he was 30, he ruled Caliban, not through conquest, through inevitability. The monsters that had once ruled the forest had been hunted to extinction by his hand. The knightly orders who once clung to their citadels had sworn fealty or vanished. Castles once defiant bowed their banners. And Luther, now a general at his side, watched the man he had raised ascend beyond anything he could match. There was no more need for war, and that is when the Emperor came. A golden light pierced the sky. Not a comet, not a godchild, the god. The master of mankind stood before the lion and smiled as if seeing an old friend. And the lion, this cold, unreadable warrior of Caliban, knelt. No hesitation, no challenge. It was not subservience. It was reunion. For the lion had always known he was not meant for Caliban. And Caliban had always known it would lose him. But the scars of that loss would fester. Luther, once the lion's guide and equal, was passed over. The Emperor elevated the lion alone. He would lead a legion, his own sons, scattered across the stars, now reunited, the Dark Angels, warriors crafted in his image, their loyalty written into their bones. And as they left Caliban, Luther remained behind, a governor in name, an exile in truth. The seeds of betrayal were not planted that day. They had already taken root. They simply needed time to grow. They say the forest still remembers the lion, that its roots pulse with the echo of his footfalls, that the beasts now hide from ghosts they cannot name. And far above Caliban, aboard a black-winged battle barge cutting through the void, the lion gazed at the galaxy for the first time, not with awe, but with suspicion. For even then he felt it. Something waited in the dark, something worse than monsters. And this time, he would not be a child lost in the woods. He would be the storm that burned the forest down. He would be the Emperor's wrath made flesh. But deep inside him, beneath armor and oath, the lion still carried that silence. That silence the beast feared. That silence the forest obeyed. And it would speak again when the stars began to scream. He was born a weapon, but they were born waiting for him. When they met, the galaxy trembled, not in awe, but in recognition. The lion did not return to a legion. He returned to a mirror. They were already waiting. The First Legion, forged in the early days of the Great Crusade, a creation of the Emperor himself. But without their Primarch, they had wandered the stars as wolves without a master, efficient, lethal, feared by all, but empty. They bore no name that mattered. No myth, no soul, not yet. But when Lionel Jonson stepped aboard the warship Invincible Reason, flanked by obsidian-armored knights in ceremonial silence, something ancient stirred among the ranks. There were no cheers, no songs, only silence, as if each warrior, from the lowliest serf to the highest commander, knew their missing center had returned. And he did not smile. He only nodded, once, and the galaxy's first sons fell to one knee, the Dark Angels. The name came later, whispered first by enemies who found only death in shadowed ruins. A name like a warning, but it was him who gave it weight. The lion did not lead like other Primarchs. He did not inspire by charisma or speeches. He inspired through inevitability, the calm before the sword. His mind a labyrinth of endless paths. His strategies layer like ancient puzzles, deceptive, merciless, elegant. He saw not just the enemy, but what the enemy feared, and he became that fear. Whole worlds fell without a siege. Cults shattered at rumors of his coming. Xenos fled without engaging, their scouts reporting a presence that could not be named, only felt, like dread seeping through the hull. But within the Legion, all was not serene. There were fractures, subtle, quiet, dangerous. The veterans of First Legion had built their own command hierarchies in his absence, lords and captains who had never needed a Primarch to win wars. And now he had returned, a stranger, a mid-turn king, whose brilliance humbled even the proudest. Some welcomed him with reverence, others with hidden bitterness. None dared challenge him openly, but they watched, and in his shadow, old loyalties began to fray. The lion trusted few, not because of arrogance, because he saw too much. He could read a man's truth in a glance, see treachery in body language, disloyalty in the way a warrior gripped his blade. He understood men better than they understood themselves, and that was his curse. He had never been one of them, not truly, not even among his sons, not even among his brothers. It was in the campaign against the Sorosh that this divide was laid bare. Sorosh, a world of strange prosperity, untouched by war, its people welcoming, its cities perfect. The Emperor himself had extended his hand in peace. But the lion did not believe in masks. He sensed a lie. Even as the diplomatic celebrations began, he walked the corridors like a predator, not paranoid, precise. And then he found it, a bomb, hidden within a gift to the Emperor. The Soroshi had plotted to destroy the master of mankind himself. It was not cunning that saved him. It was the lion. He ordered the fleet to fire upon the Soroshi envoy's ship mid-ceremony. In that moment, diplomacy died and the war erupted. Many within the Legion were stunned, some outraged. But when the dust cleared, when the truth was revealed, they understood. The lion had been right, but he had not waited. He did not ask. He knew. This became the legend of the lion, that he saw beyond the veil, that he did not wage war for glory or faith or pride. He waged it to cleanse, to correct. He was not a conqueror. He was a surgeon, and the galaxy was sick. Among the other Primarchs, he was both feared and misunderstood. Guilliman respected him but could not trust him. Dorn admired his tactics but doubted his soul. Russ hated him. They had clashed early, violently, during a joint campaign on Dulin. The lion had slain the enemy leader, a tyrant named Durith, but not with honor. He killed him in secret, avoiding unnecessary bloodshed, but denying Russ his final duel. It was pragmatic, efficient. It was unforgivable. They came to blows, not sparring, not sport, a true fight, and though neither fell, the rift between them never healed. But others saw something else. Sanguinius once said a lion. He carries the burden of justice with hands that do not tremble, but I wonder if his heart still feels its weight. And the Emperor? The Emperor saw what he had always known, that the lion was not meant to be loved. He was meant to be feared. But fear cannot unite, and the seeds of pride, already buried deep, were beginning to take root within the Legion. Luther, left behind on Caliban, had begun to question. Why had he not been given command? Why was the lion, his student, his adopted son, now a god among men, while he watched from a dying world? And those questions were fed by whispers, by ambition, by jealousy. The Dark Angels were winning wars across the galaxy, but they were losing something else. Their unity, their soul, and in the lion's silence, that fracture widened. Still, the great crusade thundered on. The lion brought death to the Rangdan, held a line against the Crones, extinguished the pitiful remnants of the men of iron. His campaigns were relentless, efficient, unstoppable. He was the Emperor's sword, sharpened against the throat of the stars. But with each victory, he drew further away, not from the enemy, from his sons, from himself. He began to sense it, a shifting in the winds of the warp, a shadow growing behind his brother's eyes. But he could not yet name it, not yet. And as the lion stood upon the bridge of his flagship, the stars before him gleaming like teeth in the dark, he felt it again, that forest silence, a memory, a warning. And somewhere far across the galaxy, Horus began to whisper, "What do you call a brother who hides a blade behind his smile?" In the silence of the stars, the lion already knew the answer. They were forged in unity, the Primarchs, scattered across the stars and brought back together by the will of the Emperor. But unity is not the same as trust, and trust is a fragile thing in the shadow of ambition. Even before the first shot of heresy was fired, the cracks were there, not in the walls of fortresses, but in the hearts of sons. And the lion never called them brothers. Not truly. He did not speak of kinship. He did not pretend to love what he could not, because he saw through them. And that is what made them fear him most. When the whisper came that Horus, the favored son, had turned, many refused to believe, but not the lion. The moment the message reached him, he stood in silence, did not speak, did not weep. He simply nodded, as if he had been waiting for the lie to reveal itself, as if he had always known. The First Legion did not falter. There was no confusion, no crisis of faith. The lion gave his order, his ships turned, and the hunt began. But this was not a war like those before. This was not a crusade. It was a betrayal. And the lion, master of strategy, wielder of precision, found himself in a battlefield where the enemy wore the faces of old friends. It disgusted him, not the treason, but the weakness that had allowed it. How had Horus, arrogant, boisterous Horus, become the architect of damnation? How had Fulgrim fallen? How had Mordorion been twisted? How had Kurz, that mad wretch in Nostromo, sunk even deeper into the pit? He looked at them and saw reflections of a sickness long festering, one he had always sensed. But now it was awake. He did not rush to Terra. That, too, many would question. Why had the lion not been at the siege? Why had he not stood beside Dorn and Sanguinius in the final hour? Because the war was larger than one throne, and the lion did not fight where the light was brightest. He hunted in the shadows. When the War Master unleashed his forces, entire sectors fell into madness. The lion's campaigns were not glorious. They were not remembered in songs, but they were necessary. He struck at supply lines, decapitated traitor command chains, obliterated forge worlds that fed the War Master's war machine. And when he fought, he vanished. The enemy never saw him coming. Entire legions would march upon a planet only to find their supply caches destroyed, their ships dismantled, their leaders assassinated in the dark. The lion did not make war. He made absence, and in that absence, he let fear do the rest. But the shadows held more than enemies. They held secrets, terrible ones. It was during one such campaign, deep within the Maelstrom's edge, that the lion came upon something that should not have been. A world broken by time, twisted not by the warp, but by memory. There, in the ruins of what seemed a lost Imperium outpost, he found fragments, data slates, records, torn pieces of truth that had survived fire and madness. And what he read turned his blood to ice. It spoke of Luther, of Caliban, of betrayal. Luther, his once brother, his closest companion, had not stayed idle. He had not ruled in peace. He had sown doubt, sown ambition, sown heresy. And Caliban was no longer the world the lion had known. It had become a fortress, a temple, not to chaos. No, to resentment. The lion said nothing to his men, but the moment he returned to the fleet, he changed course. They would go home. The Great Crusade was over. The heresy was ending. But for the First Legion, their greatest war was just beginning. When the lion returned to Caliban, he expected resistance. But what he found was war. Orbital batteries opened fire without warning. Dark angels, his sons, turned their guns upon him. And below, within the hollowed halls of the Order's keep, Luther waited. He wore no armor, only robes of green and gold. His eyes were calm, and when the lion descended to face him, they stood alone, Primarch and Knight, on the same soil where it had all begun. Luther spoke first. He said the lion had abandoned them, that the emperor had lied, that Caliban was no longer a prison, but a sanctuary, and the lion said nothing, because his heart was already broken. He had not come to argue. He had come to end it, and so they fought. It was not a duel. It was a storm. Brother against brother. Light against shadow. The walls trembled. The air split with sonic fury. Time itself bled. And in that final clash, Luther unleashed a power not his own. Warp-touched, unseen, fed by years of resentment. And he struck the lion down. But even chaos recoils from regret. In the moment of victory, Luther saw what he had done. He saw the man who had raised him, the warrior who had once been his family, and he screamed. He broke, and in his despair, he turned his wrath upon the entity that had whispered in his ear. The warp twisted, the ritual shattered, and Caliban died. Fire rained from the heavens. The planet cracked. Much of the Legion, still loyal, was obliterated in an instant. Those who survived carried shame. And the lion? He vanished. Some say his body was never found. Others say he was taken by the Emperor's will. But the truth lies deeper, buried, beneath the rubble of a dead world. Within the rock, the last bastion of the First Legion, now a fortress monastery adrift among the stars. There, within its silent heart, the lion sleeps, but not forever. For now, the galaxy burns again, and old wounds do not stay buried. The First returns, and he is no longer silent. You do not mourn a world like Caliban. You remember it like a scar remembers a flame. It began with a silence, not the kind that brings peace, but the kind that comes after screaming, when all that remains is ruin and memory and the soft, sickening drip of betrayal. Caliban, once a homeworld of the First Legion, now existed only as an echo, a broken crescent of blasted rock, hollowed within by the hand of its own son. Luther lived, but what remained of him was no longer a man. Captured by the Loyalists, he was taken into custody, his mind shattered, his tongue loose with madness. He spoke of whispers in the dark, of voices not his own, of a war behind the veil. But most of all, he spoke of the lion, and that the lion had not died, that he slept somewhere deep within the rock, beneath layers of adamantium and grief. In a vault sealed with symbols older than man, the lion's body was hidden, not dead, not gone, resting, waiting, and the dark angels, those who survived, took a vow, a silence deeper than mourning. They would not speak of Caliban. They would not speak of Luther. And they would never speak of the fallen, once brothers, now heretics, those dark angels who turned during the battle for Caliban, who followed Luther into madness or were simply caught in the shattering storm, had scattered across the stars. Some embraced chaos. Others fled from it. All became prey. The hunt began not with fury, but with shame. The inner circle, those chosen to carry the burden of truth, became the executioners of their own past. They spoke no names. They left no records. Only blood, and a question that haunted every battle. What if the next fallen was you? The lion's absence became a myth, a whisper in the corridors of the rock. They said he would return when the galaxy needed him most, that he would rise when the last light dimmed and the stars themselves wept. Others said he would never return, that Caliban had broken not just his body, but his will, that no son, no warrior, no Primarch should carry such guilt and remain whole. But they did not know the lion. They never truly knew, for the lion had always walked alone, even among his brothers, even among his sons. He had carried the burden of justice not as a banner, but as a blade. He had waged wars not for glory, but to correct what was broken. And when he could not correct Caliban, he vanished, not in death, but in penance. The rock drifted for millennia, A fortress chapel in the void. It bore the scars of Caliban, fused into its core. Within its labyrinthine halls, the secret orders of the Dark Angels sharpened their dogma, purged their histories, and erased their shame. They became zealots, fanatics, hunters, because if the lion returned, he could not find them unworthy. And yet, through it all, the galaxy burned. The heresy gave way to the scouring. The scouring gave way to slow collapse. Empires fractured, the warp screamed, and the Primarchs, one by one, were lost. Some to madness, some to battle, some to silence. The lion was not alone in his absence, but he was unique in his purpose. Deep within the vaults of the rock, wrapped in stasis fields and silence, the lion dreamed. But his dreams were not his own. They were haunted by Caliban's forests, by the screams of his sons, by the look in Luther's eyes before the blade fell, and by a whisper, not chaos, not the warp, something older, a truth he had always suspected, that justice, true justice, cannot coexist with empire, that the Imperium he had died for was already rotting. But the galaxy could not afford philosophy. It needed salvation. And so, as the cicatrix maledictum split the stars, rending the Imperium in half and drowning its worlds in madness, something stirred in the depths of the rock. Lights flickered, alarms failed, and then a breath, a hand, eyes, green and gold like Caliban before the fall. The lion had awakened, not reborn, not healed, awakened. And what rose from that tomb was not the same being who had once commanded the First Legion. He was older, sharper, silent no longer, because now he saw the galaxy as it truly was, a graveyard lit by lies. And if the Emperor was truly alive, he had allowed this. And if he was dead, then someone must take up the blade, not for vengeance, not for pride, but because someone must, because the forest is dark again, and the monsters have returned, and the lion does not forget how to hunt. He does not seek reunion. He does not seek praise. He seeks the fallen, all of them, not just those who turned at Caliban, but those in high places, those who wear the Emperor's face but feast like tyrants, those who speak of loyalty but trade in souls, those who let the Imperium die in the name of power. The lion walks the stars once more. His blade is drawn, his purpose clear. He will not lead a crusade. He will pass judgment. And his silence, once feared, is now a verdict. What breaks the hardest steel? Not fire, not time, but memory. And the lion remembers everything. The lion walks again, not as a warlord, not as a messiah, but as something far colder, something final. When he emerged from the depths of the rock, the stars themselves seemed to flinch. The stasis field cracked like ancient bone, the vault shuddering as if trying to hold him back, one last time. But nothing could hold him. Not now. He wore no crown, no symbols of office, only dark armor chased in ghost gold and midnight. The blade in his hand was not just a weapon, it was his answer. Fealty was not asked, it was assumed, because those who saw him knew. The Primarch had returned, but not the one they remembered, not the Knight of Caliban, not the General of the Great Crusade. This was the lion after the fall, and the blade in his hand had questions. He spoke little. His voice was low, measured like distant thunder, but his presence silenced rooms. The watchers in the dark were the first to greet him. Strange beings, silent guardians, older than memory, who had once followed him through Caliban's cursed woods. They did not kneel, they did not speak, but they led him to old relics, to sealed vaults, to truths he had once buried. And in the blackened mirror of history, the lion saw what had become of his legacy. The Dark Angels had survived, but not unchanged. They were still warriors, still proud, but now secretive, obsessive, fragmented. They hunted the fallen with a hunger that bordered on madness. They wore their silence like a shroud, and when the lion looked upon them, he did not weep, he did not rage. He understood, for they had inherited his sins, and they had not broken beneath them. He did not seek Azrael, the supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels, custodian of their endless war, came to him. When they met, no words passed for a long time, only the sound of old armor shifting, of ghosts remembering. Azrael knelt, and the lion, after a long pause, extended his hand, not in absolution, in recognition. But the galaxy was already burning. The rift had torn reality in half. Demon worlds bled into real space. The Astronomicon flickered, and the lion did not look to Terra. He did not seek reunion with the Emperor or Guilliman. He turned his gaze to the stars and began to walk. He became a shadow in the night, a wandering blade. No fleet, no army, just whispers. Worlds had fallen silent, suddenly free. Planets under chaos siege, found purged by an unknown hand. PDF forces who reported salvation by a tall, robed warrior, wielding a blade of light. Many did not believe. Some called it myth, a false Primarch, a trick of the warp. But others knew. The lion was hunting again. Not just the fallen, not just traitors, but corruption within the Imperium, within its priests, its lords, its sons. One such world was Gaddisman, a shrine world desecrated by a warband of the word-bearers, its cathedrals defiled, its clergy flayed in ritual sacrifice. The Adeptus Mini-Storm had begged for aid. None came, but in the ruins of the central basilica, as the air thickened with warp stench and the chants of profane echoed through shattered marble, a figure stepped from the shadows, not with fury, with silence. He did not speak to the traitors. He did not issue threats. He simply moved, and when he moved, they died, one by one. The fallen Astartes, clad in Baroque, demon-bound armor, met the blade of Caliban. They fought like beasts, but he fought like judgment. And when the last one fell, gasping, hissing prayers to God that no longer listened, the lion stood among them, alone, untouched. The people emerged from hiding, and for a moment, they knelt, not to the Imperium, to him, because in that moment, they saw something rare. Not just power, but clarity. The lion did not stay. He never did. He moved like the wind through a dying forest. Wherever he passed, something was corrected, not healed, not saved, just set right. And if that meant death, so be it, because he was not a prophet, not a saint, not a king. He was a blade. In time, other warriors joined him, not legions, not banners, just souls, unbroken, unyielding, unwanted, exiles, repentance, forgotten heroes. Some were dark angels, called by blood. Others were strangers, drawn by myth. They called themselves the Risen, not because they had fallen, but because they had remembered who they were, what they once swore to protect, and why it mattered. The lion walks at the edge of the storm, not to hold it back, to enter it, to go where others fear, to do what others won't. And behind him, in silence, walk warriors who have nothing left but the will to fight, and the hope that he will lead them not to glory, but to truth. He does not speak at Caliban, not openly, but sometimes when the stars dim and the fires die down, he walks alone, and he looks to the void where once a world had been, and his hand tightens on the hilt of his sword, not in sorrow, but in promise, because the blade remembers. And so does he. The greatest lies are not spoken. They are inherited, and the lion has come to bury them. The Imperium did not welcome the lion's return. Not truly. There were no parades, no decrees, no golden statues raised his image. Only silence, calculated political silence, because his return was not convenient. It was not part of the plan. Guilliman, the regent of the Imperium, had already reshaped the galaxy in the Emperor's name. He had raised armies, reformed bureaucracies, crafted visions of survival amid the apocalypse, and the lion was not part of that vision. He was a reminder of things buried, things broken, things unforgiven. When the lion and Guilliman met, it was not as brothers, it was as opposites. Guilliman spoke of order, of survival, of unity through doctrine and control. But the lion saw through it. He saw the machine turning, cold and self-consuming. He saw the gears of the Imperium grinding faith into ash and calling it victory. And he said nothing, because some truths do not need to be argued. They are witnessed. The meeting was brief, formal. It ended with a nod of loyalty, of recognition. Each knew the other could not be moved. Guilliman returned to his crusade. The lion returned to shadows. And the Imperium, in its arrogance, sighed in relief, because the lion does not ask permission. While bureaucrats debated deployments and generals squabble over supply lines, the lion waged a different war, one they could not see, one they could not survive. He hunted the unseen rot, the hidden traitors, the corrupted governors, the demonic cults that wore imperial uniforms and prayed in whispers to things that should not exist. In the fortress world of Rhine's Teeth, he walked through fire and silence. The governor had declared loyalty to the throne, but the people disappeared in the night. Children taken for testing. Priests replaced by masks. And when the lion entered the throne chamber, the truth revealed itself not in words, but in fear. The governor stammered, reached for a hidden weapon. The guards raised their rifles. And then the blade sang. 12 heartbeats later, the room was quiet. He left no speech, no warning, only the scent of burning corruption and the freedom of a city no longer chained. This became the legend of his return, that he came where no help would come, that he judged where others negotiated, that he killed quietly. He did not wear the Emperor's light like a torch. He wore it like a blade pressed to the throat of the damned. But the lion's war was not just against the enemy outside. It was against the disease within. There are secrets within the Imperium, old ones, and the lion has found them. He has walked in vaults not meant for any mortal. He has spoken with voices that should not be awake. He has uncovered records that rewrite what his legion once believed. He has seen things that even Guilliman refuses to speak of, and he has realized a terrible truth. The Imperium no longer serves the Emperor. It serves itself. It survives not through faith, but through fear, and that fear has become its god. On the moon of a laver, beneath the ruins of a Mechanicus temple, he found it, a ritual chamber, 10,000 years old, filled with statues of angels, but not as angels. These were twisted, winged things, horned and beautiful and hollow, each one carved with reverence, each one named after fallen. He did not speak. He shattered them, one by one, and as the dust rose around him, he whispered one word, Luther. The lion has begun to suspect something darker than treachery. Not a single fall, but a pattern, a design that stretches back to the birth of the Imperium, one that used the Primarchs as weapons, used the legions as pawns, used the heresy as proof. And he wonders now, was Luther ever truly the traitor, or was he simply the first one to see it? The risen grow in number. His following is not commanded. It is earned. With every world he liberates, with every truth he reveals, others come, not in banners, not in armies, but in silence, rogue inquisitors, exiled Astartes, pilgrims who have lost everything but belief. They follow not because he is a Primarch, but because he does not lie. He does not promise salvation, only justice. And justice in this galaxy is a heresy. There are whispers now among the High Lords. They speak of the Lion in private, in shadowed halls. They fear what he might reveal. They fear what he already knows. They ask Guilliman to rein him in. But Guilliman knows better. The Lion cannot be leashed, because he does not serve them. He serves the Emperor as he was, not as they pretend he is. And in the darkness beyond the Imperium, the fallen feel it too, a pressure, a presence. Some hide, some gather, some prepare, because they know what comes next. The Lion is not hunting a few. He is hunting all of them, every whisper, every traitor, every unpunished sin. And when he finds them, he will not speak of mercy. He will speak of Caliban. He will speak of truth, and he will let his blade finish the story. You can wrap rotting gold, build palaces atop bones, and call a holy, but the Lion sees what lies beneath. The throne world is not a beacon. It is a mausoleum. Terra, cradle of humanity, throne of the God Emperor, is a planet of ash and echoes, drowning in bureaucracy and incense. A million voices chant praise to a corpse, a trillion lives spent fueling a lied-to sacred question. And when the Lion set foot upon it once more, there were no cheers, no welcome, no celebration, only alarmed whispers and closed doors. He walked alone, not with an army, not with banners, but with judgment in his eyes and memories in his stride. Each step an accusation, each silence an open wound. The custodians did not stop him. They watched, weighed him, judged him as he judged them. There was no challenge in their eyes, only curiosity, perhaps even pity. He did not ask to see the Emperor. He knew better, because what sat upon that throne was no longer him. Guilliman met him in the upper sanctums. No guards, no ceremony, just two brothers, burdened by time, broken by truth. Guilliman offered words, plans, orders. The Lion answered with stillness. There is a moment between soldiers, ancient, wordless, when they realize they are no longer fighting the same war. That moment passed between them like a shadow. Guilliman fights to preserve the Imperium. The Lion fights to purge it. They did not argue, not loudly, not with anger, but with conviction. Guilliman spoke of survival, of holding the line, of keeping the enemy out. The Lion spoke of rot within, of decay masked as faith, of justice long denied. And when Guilliman said, "You cannot save it all," the Lion only answered, "I don't intend to." The High Lord summoned him, not to kneel, to question, to contain. They spoke with practiced voices, diplomatic, authoritative. They demanded fealty. They questioned his loyalties. And the Lion laughed, quietly, not mockery, something colder, something that hurt. He asked them one thing, just one. When was the last time you bled for this throne? No one answered. He left them in silence. That silence would haunt them for years. He did not stay. He would not become a symbol. Not for them. He left Terra as he arrived, alone. But now the galaxy knew. The Lion had returned, not as a servant, as a reckoning. Word spread like wildfire. Some cheered, some trembled. There were systems where preachers called him the Lion of the end times, where zealots offered their own hearts as proof of loyalty. And there were others, cold, strategic minds within the Inquisition, the Adeptus Mechanicus, even within the Custodes, who began to draw lines, prepare contingencies, because they saw it. The Lion is not a blade to wield. He is a blade drawn, and no one is safe when he is unsheathed. In the far reaches of the Segmentum Pacificus, a rebellion sparked. A planet long thought compliant turned, raising banners of the old Imperium. Not for chaos, but for truth. They rejected the High Lords, denounced the ecclesiarchy. They invoked the Lion, and he came, not with speeches, not with promises, with fire, not to destroy the rebellion, but to make it pure. He burned the heretics, executed the corrupt, and when the smoke cleared, he left them standing leaderless, shaken but free. He did not install a new governor. He left no decree. Only a single phrase etched in stone at the city center. Be worthy of what comes next. And what comes next is not peace. It is not crusade. It is judgment. The Lion has begun to draw maps no cartographer can follow, of ancient odes, of fallen stars, of truths buried beneath protocol. He has visited ruins that should not exist. He has unlocked doors long sealed by the Emperor himself. He has spoken to machines that dream in data older than the Mechanicum, and he has seen what lies at the edge of the storm. It is not just chaos. It is not just the ruinous powers. It is us, the Imperium, the lie it became, the silence it enforces, the rot it breeds. And so the Lion does not fight for the Imperium. He fights for the Emperor, not the god, not the idol, but the man, the one who dared to build truth from ash, the one who knew what justice meant. And every time the Lion raises his blade, it is not in service of doctrine. It is in service of memory, faint, fading, but still burning, of what this could have been, what it must be again, or not at all, because he remembers Caliban, a world that was flawed, cursed, monstrous, but still real, still worth fighting for, and he will not let another lie wear its skin. We inherit more than names. We inherit wounds. The Lion bears both, and neither have healed. The Lion walks, but every step echoes with the sound of a planet breaking. Caliban still lives inside him, not as soil or stone, but as failure, as reminder. The forest is gone. The citadel is ash, but the betrayal bleeds eternal. Because it was not a planet that broke. It was brotherhood, and brotherhood, once shattered, cannot be reforged. He sees it in the faces of those who now walk beside him. The risen, some once proud dark angels, others only shadows of what they were. Each of them carries the same ghost. They have come not for forgiveness, but for purpose. They no longer seek the Lion's approval. They seek his judgment, and he gives it in silence. Not all are accepted. Some who come are sent away. Others do not leave at all, because the Lion does not need numbers. He needs truth. Among them walks a warrior named Seraphan, who once bore the rank of interrogator chaplain, a man who spent centuries hunting the fallen, delivering absolution at the end of the blade. He had believed the lie of purity. He had fed it to others. But now, he walks without badge, without title, because he knows. He knows they were never just hunting the traitor. They were hunting the past. And you cannot kill the past, only be consumed by it. In the icy depths of the wasting halo, the Lion finds an ancient listening post, imperial in architecture, but desecrated by a presence colder than warp. There, among the frozen dead, he discovers a message broadcast into nothing. A voice, Luther's, recorded during his long captivity within the rock. His words are fragmented, cracked, maddened, but within the madness lies clarity. He speaks of a cycle, of us, of the Primarchs. He speaks of the Emperor, not as a god, not as a tyrant, but as a man who made a weapon out of his own children. Tell me, Lion, the voice says, when you look at your sons, do you see their faces or your own guilt? The recording ends in static, and for the first time since waking, the Lion does not move. He stands there for hours, still, until the frost begins to thaw. Because Luther is not dead. The lion feels it, not with hope, not with fear, with certainty. Somewhere in this broken galaxy, his brother walks still, changed, twisted, but alive. And the lion knows what must be done, not for revenge, not for closure, but for truth. The fallen are many. They were the colors of heresy, the robes of cults, the armor of forgotten wars. They are scattered, hunted, hated, but they are not united. Yet, the lion has begun to sense it, a pattern, movements in the warp, cults once rivaling, now merging. Communications intercepted between rogue war bands, all invoking a name long thought abandoned. Luther, the fallen are rallying, not for chaos, not for the Imperium, but for something else, for a truth denied for 10,000 years. And the lion prepares, not with legions, not with crusades, with intent. He sharpens a sword not just for battle, but for judgment. He drills the risen not in parade formations, but in silence, in discipline, in memory. Every rite they perform is a confession. Every battle, a penance. They are not warriors. They are witnesses to the sins of the Imperium, to the sins of their own legion. He returns to a place he never thought to see again. The astropathic vaults of Bastion Arda, long sealed, now reopened under order of Guilliman himself. There, within a vault of black stone, he finds relics preserved from the scouring. Names erased from history, messages intercepted and silenced. He finds a letter, and signed, unfinished, written by a hand that shook. We followed you because we believed in you. We turned because you left us, not in body, in spirit. We saw the man who could not forgive, and so we chose the only truth left to us. The handwriting is familiar. It is not Luther's. It is Zahariel's, a name the lion has not spoken in centuries, a name he buried, and now it returns with accusation. Zahariel was more than a warrior. He was a believer, one of the first of the order to rise with the Legion, a son of Caliban through and through. He had spoken often of unity, of a future not defined by Terra's laws or Caliban's chains, but by choice. He had stood beside Luther, and when the cataclysm came, he chose. But he had never been a puppet. He had believed, and that belief is now a fire rekindled in the void. The lion knows what it means. The fallen are not gathering to destroy the Imperium. They are gathering to replace it, not with chaos, but with truth, as they see it. And so the lion moves again, to the edge of known space, to the fractured remnants of Calibanese colonies once lost in the warp, to old bastions hidden in deep orbit, where the symbols of the Order have not yet faded. He hunts not to destroy, but to understand, because a storm is coming, not from the eye, but from within, and it wears his face. He does not seek absolution. He seeks the truth beneath all lies, and when he finds it, he will draw his blade one final time. The lion stands at the edge of the galaxy, not metaphorically, physically. Beyond this system, the stars thin out, the warp grows erratic. No ships pass here willingly. It is the dead breath of space, cold and whispering, but he has followed the trail to its end. A system marked only in forbidden data sigils, lost during the scouring, erased from official records, but not from memory, not from his. Here lies Caliban's mirror, a world the Imperium never acknowledged, a colony from the Order's earliest diaspora, sent out before the coming of the Emperor, before the warp storms broke the sky. The people here were once knights. Now they are something else, something forgotten, and something waiting. The risen deploy in silence. No banners, no voxhails, just dark shapes cutting through void and cloud. They descend through ruins choked with ivy and ash, past spires carved with a lion's face, his younger face unscarred, idealized. The people here do not fight. They kneel. They welcome him like a king returning from war. And he feels nothing. Not pride, not joy, only dread, because he can see it in their eyes. They don't follow him. They follow a myth. And myth is the deadliest lie of all. At the heart of the temple, he finds him. Luther, not broken, not chained, not mad. Oh, older, yes, weathered, but his eyes are clear. They do not draw swords. They talk. The conversation is slow, painful. Two lives weighed down by decades of silence and violence, of wounds left to fester in the dark. The lion asks, why? And Luther answers, not with rage, not with pride, with grief. You became what I feared, he says. Not a tyrant, but a tool, a sword with no hand to guide it, a knight with no soul. The lion listens, and for once he does not argue, because he knows. Luther speaks of the fallen. How many were not corrupted, not damned, but simply abandoned? They had doubts. They asked questions, and in return, they were hunted. He speaks of a dream, not of rebellion, but of restoration, a new order, a galaxy not ruled by stagnant gods and broken systems, but led by those who still remembered what honor once meant. He speaks as a herald, still alive, still gathering those who believe. And he speaks of the lion, not as a weapon, but as a choice. You can kill me, he says, end the war. Or you can listen and end the lie. The lion draws his sword. The air tenses. The risen prepare for violence. But he does not strike. He sets the sword down and walks away. Because the war is not one with blades anymore. It is one with truth. And the truth is not simple. There are fallen who must be hunted. But there are also lies that must be unlearned. And justice, true justice, is not blind. It sees everything, and still chooses. In the days that follow, a council is called, not of lords, not of priests, of witnesses, former fallen, loyalist remnants, risen warriors, scholars who remember the order, refugees of ruined worlds. The lion listens. He does not preach. He does not demand. He builds, not an empire, an idea. And from that idea, something stirs. Not a rebellion, not a crusade, a reclamation of purpose, of brotherhood, of truth. The Imperium does not understand. They send emissaries. They send spies. Some vanish. Some return changed. Because the lion has not turned against the emperor. He has turned against what the Imperium became. And his silence is no longer retreat. It is a summons to those who still remember Caliban, to those who still believe in justice over dogma, to those who are ready to fight, not for survival, but for meaning. He still hunts, but no longer in vengeance. Now, he hunts to wake the dead, to remind them of what they were and what they must become. He is not here to reclaim a legion. He is here to rewrite its soul, not in stone, in action, because in the end, the lion was never about purity. He was about correction, and the galaxy has strayed too far to be corrected with fire alone. It must be rebuilt, one truth at a time, one oath at a time, one blade, sheathed or drawn, in the hand of a man who remembers.